The rain was coming down in sheets as I drove home from work, the kind of rain that blurred the city lights into hazy halos. I was looking forward to seeing Emily, maybe ordering some takeout and watching a movie. It had been a long week, and all I wanted was to relax with my wife. We'd been married for 7 years, together for 10. Emily was 39 and I was 41. We lived in a cozy little house in Minneapolis, a place we'd filled with memories and laughter. Or so I thought. I pulled into the driveway, the tires crunching on the gravel. The house was dark, which was unusual. Emily usually had a lamp on, a warm beacon against the Minnesota gloom. I shrugged it off, figuring she was just tired and had gone to bed early. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, calling out her name. "Emily, I'm home." Silence. The only sound was the drumming of the rain against the windows. I flipped on the light in the living room and the familiar space sprang into view. The comfy couch, the bookshelves overflowing with our favorite novels, the framed photos of us on various adventures. Everything looked normal, but there was an unsettling stillness in the air. I walked through the house, checking each room. The kitchen was empty, the counters clean. The guest room was untouched. Finally, I reached our bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and a sliver of light spilled out into the hallway. I pushed it open, expecting to find Emily asleep. What I saw instead stopped me dead in my tracks. Emily wasn't alone. She was in bed with another man, not just any man. It was David, my best friend since college. They were tangled together under the covers, completely oblivious to my presence. The sight was so surreal, so utterly incomprehensible, that for a moment I thought I was hallucinating. My mind struggled to process what my eyes were seeing. Emily, my wife, the woman I loved and trusted, was betraying me in the most intimate way possible, and she was doing it with someone I considered my brother. The blood drained from my face and my hands started to tremble. I felt a surge of anger so intense that it threatened to consume me. But beneath the anger there was a deeper, more profound pain. A pain that ripped through my heart and left me gasping for air. The pain of betrayal. The pain of shattered trust. The pain of losing everything I thought I knew about my life. I stood there, frozen in the doorway for what felt like an eternity. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to tear them apart, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by shock and disbelief. Finally, Emily stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She saw me and her face went white. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her looking like a ghost. "John," she whispered, her voice barely audible. David, still half asleep, turned to see what she was looking at. His eyes widened in horror as he took in the scene. He scrambled out of bed, tripping over the sheets in his haste. "John, man, it's not what you think," he stammered, his voice shaking. "Really, David? Then what is it?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "Because it looks pretty clear to me." Emily started to cry, tears streaming down her face. "John, please let me explain," she sobbed. "Explain? What was there to explain? I had just walked in on my wife and my best friend in bed together." There were no words that could make that okay. There were no excuses that could justify that level of betrayal. "Out," I said, my voice cold and hard. "Both of you, get out of my house." David didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed his clothes and fled, not even bothering to look me in the eye. Emily remained huddled in the bed, sobbing uncontrollably. "John, I'm so sorry," she wailed. "I didn't mean for this to happen." "You didn't mean for it to happen," I repeated, my voice rising. "You climbed into bed with my best friend. How much more intentional can you get?" "It was a mistake," she pleaded. "A stupid, drunken mistake." "Mistake?" I scoffed. "You've been lying to me for months. The late nights at work, the secret phone calls, the way you've been avoiding me. It all makes sense now." She didn't deny it. She just kept crying, her body shaking with sobs. "I don't even know why I did it," she said, her voice muffled by the pillows. "I guess I was just bored." Our life had become so routine, so predictable. I needed something more exciting. Bored. That was her excuse. After 7 years of marriage, after all the love and commitment we had shared, she was throwing it all away because she was bored. The anger welled up inside me again, threatening to explode. "Out, Emily," I said, my voice trembling. "I don't ever want to see you again." She looked at me, her eyes filled with despair. "John, please don't do this," she begged. "I can change, I promise." "It's too late, Emily," I said, my voice flat. "You broke my heart. You destroyed our marriage. There's no going back." She finally seemed to realize that I was serious. She got out of bed, gathered her clothes, and walked out of the room, her shoulders slumped in defeat. I stood there, alone in the bedroom, the rain still pounding against the windows. The silence was deafening. The room felt cold and empty, devoid of the warmth and love that had once filled it. I sank down onto the edge of the bed, my head in my hands. I couldn't believe what had just happened. My wife, the woman I had loved and trusted more than anyone in the world, had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way. And she had done it with my best friend, the man I had considered my brother. My life had been shattered into a million pieces, and I didn't know how to put it back together. The next few days were a blur. I barely slept, barely ate. I spent most of my time in a daze, wandering around the house like a ghost. I couldn't bring myself to touch anything, to look at anything that reminded me of Emily. Every object, every photograph, every shared memory was a painful reminder of what I had lost. I called a lawyer and started the divorce process. It was a cold, clinical procedure, filled with legal jargon and paperwork. But it was necessary. I couldn't stay married to Emily, not after what she had done. I also called David. I didn't yell, I didn't scream. I just told him that I never wanted to see him again, that he was dead to me. He tried to apologize, to explain, but I hung up on him. There was nothing he could say that would make things right. As the days turned into weeks, I started to emerge from my fog of grief and anger. I realized that I couldn't let Emily's betrayal define me. I couldn't let it destroy my life. I had to move on. I had to rebuild. I had to find a way to be happy again. I started by focusing on myself. I went back to the gym, started eating healthy, and spent more time with my family and friends. I reconnected with old hobbies and discovered new ones. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. I found solace in the creative process, pouring my emotions onto the canvas. I also started seeing a therapist. She helped me process my feelings of grief, anger, and betrayal. She helped me understand that Emily's actions were not a reflection of my worth as a person, that I was still lovable, still deserving of happiness. One evening, about 6 months after the divorce, I was at a local art gallery, showcasing some of my paintings. I was nervous, but also excited. It felt good to be putting myself out there again, to be sharing my art with the world. As I was talking to a potential buyer, I saw Emily walk into the gallery. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't seen her since the day I kicked her out of the house. She looked different, thinner, more tired. Her eyes were sad and her smile didn't reach them. She walked over to me, her expression hesitant. "John, can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. We walked outside, away from the crowd, and stood in the cool evening air. "I just wanted to say that I'm sorry," she said, her eyes filled with tears. "I know that what I did was unforgivable. I destroyed our marriage and I hurt you deeply. I'll never forgive myself." I looked at her, trying to gauge her sincerity. "Why are you telling me this now, Emily?" I asked. "Because I need you to know that I regret it," she said. "I made a terrible mistake and I've been paying for it ever since. David left me a few weeks after you kicked us out. He said he couldn't handle the guilt. I'm alone now, John, and I deserve it." I didn't say anything. I just looked at her, my mind racing. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued. "I know that's impossible, but I just wanted you to know that I'm truly sorry, and that I hope someday you can find happiness again." She turned to leave, but I stopped her. "Emily," I said, "I don't know if I can ever forgive you completely, but I appreciate you saying this, and I do hope that you can find happiness too." She smiled, a genuine smile this time. "Thank you, John," she said. "That means a lot." She walked away, disappearing into the night. I watched her go, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Anger, sadness, regret, and something else. Something that felt like forgiveness. I realized that I had finally started to heal. That I was no longer defined by Emily's betrayal. That I was free to move on, to find love again, to create a new life for myself. The rain had stopped, and the stars were starting to peek through the clouds. The city lights twinkled in the distance, a reminder of the endless possibilities that lay ahead. I took a deep breath and walked back into the gallery, ready to face the future, whatever it may hold.